Okay, I'm going to go to the next Perik. Perik Vo, Mishnah Beis, but we'll do a Hagdoma for it in order to familiarize ourselves. We already explained that there are three provinces of Eretz Yisrael. There's the Kedusha Rishona, Yetz Mitzrayim, which is temporary according to the Mishnayos here in Masechta Shvius. So therefore, only with the Rabbanon is there a problem of Shvius, because after the Churban, technically it's nullified. Then there's Kedusha Shniya, which was Ezra by Oile Dava, which is not Kidsha only the Shaita, but La'asam La'avoy. There's a permanency to it. On account of that, it basically has all the halachas of the Torah, and it's a much smaller area. As we went through the maps, maybe next week I'll do a different map, which is a little bit clearer. Then there's Eretz Surya, which is brought down throughout Chazal.
Let's talk about the name.
Which is Surya. What's Syria?
It sounds like it's a combination of Sur and Khan.
No, nothing to do with that. No. Surya, and that is in the area of Syria, Damascus, and that, even though it's like Chutz La'aretz, it's still a little bit different. It has different halachas than the rest of Chul, of Chutz La'aretz. Now, let's go through a Hagdoma here that he brings down very nicely from the Siyata D'Shmaya to get things a little bit more clearer. Eretz Surya V'Dinel, this land of Surya and all of its laws. Kosav HaRambam in Hilchos Trumas, Harotze Shekavish David HaMelech, Chutz L'Eretz Canaan, all those lands that were captured by David HaMelech, of course, not including proper Eretz Canaan, Kugoyin Aram Narayim, Aram Tzoiva, Va'achra, V'Kiyoyse Behem, different areas outside of Israel, which was towards what we call the northeast. That's Eretz Surya. Afa Pishem Melech Yisrael, even though David HaMelech was the king of Israel, Val Pi Bezin HaGodol HaYoisem, and he did it through the Bezin HaGodol, meaning the Bezin that you had in Yerushalayim, the Shivim, Eina Ke'eretz Yisrael Dova. It's a little bit of a hybrid. It's not like Eretz Yisrael, and we don't consider it like proper Chul. Kugoyin Bavel Mitzrayim, like Bavel Mitzrayim, or the United States of America. El Yotzu Michal Chutz La'aretz. It goes a bit out of the classification of Chutz La'aretz Eretz Surya, which we already mentioned previously about L'moshel Dinam of Chala. L'yoysim Ke'eretz Yisrael Le'egiu. But they did not come to being like Eretz Yisrael. Now, why over here do we say that it's different? According to this Rambam, why do we take it below the classification of Eretz Yisrael? Because he captured these areas prior to him capturing all of what Eretz Yisrael was supposed to be about. And it's explained that there were part of the 7 nations that were living there, he left there. This is a Tosefta. If he would have captured all of Eretz Canaan with its proper boundaries, David HaMelech, now, it wasn't done that way. He didn't do it in the proper fashion, basically. So this was called Kibush Yochid, because it should have been done. David HaMelech, even though he was a big tzaddik, he didn't fulfill his mission in the proper order, and therefore the Rambam holds that created that it's called a Kibush Yochid. What's a Kibush Yochid? Not a Kibush Rabbin, a public capturing, but it's a private capturing. Haratzis Shekavish David, those lands that David captured, Hein HaNikroi Surya. They are called the area, the province, as we mentioned previously, the province of Surya. The Kibush Shel David HaMelech Nikra Kibush Yochid. We consider it a private capturing. The Kaimelon de Lashmei Kibush. And our Mishnah, which we'll be dealing with, will say it's not considered Kibush. Very nice, it's captured. Or, the lack of a better term, it's occupied territories, but it's not part of Eretz Yisrael.
If you would have captured Eretz Yisrael first and then conquered these lands.
Like the Shita, it seems maybe it would have been different, but it wasn't that way. These were the facts on the ground.
I think there's a Gemara, right, that it talks about that he should have taken the.
He should have. That's right. He should have, but he didn't. He did it in an improper order. The cost of a Rambam in that same perik, Halacha Dalit, Ba'adin Shel Surya Yesh Dvarim Shebehem Ke'Eretz Yisrael. It's like a hybrid. It has certain halachas of Eretz Yisrael, of course, with the Rabbanon. Yesh, because it's not true blue Eretz Yisrael. Yisrael Shu Ke'Behem K'Chutz La'aretz. So therefore, how far does it go? Meaning, what does the halachas that we consider Surya like Eretz Yisrael? What stringencies do we give it that we consider it like Eretz Yisrael? If hakoyne was like the Rambam, hakoyne b'karka, if let's say someone buys a piece of property, kikoyne b'Eretz Yisrael, it's as if he, for all intents and purposes, as if he bought it in Eretz Yisrael, liyan trumas amaisus shvius. V'akol b'surya is b'divri sofer. And he says over there, he doesn't bring it down over here, he says over here, V'sham b'perik alav halacha tes nisbayi b'diyak ezi shetach Surya. The Rambam gives over there what are the actual geographic boundaries of Surya. Now, he brings down over here in the bottom, the Chemdas Yisrael, something that would interest us because we just now learned the Parsha Shmuah, so it comes into play. The Eretz Amun Moyev, which we all know, if you look at a map, a traditional map, where's Amun Moyev? On the eastern part of Eretz Yisrael proper, that was captured, which is the Mizrach Shel Eretz Yisrael. It's the eastern part. Or Mitzrayim, or Eretz Mitzrayim, which was the Drayim Shel Eretz Yisrael, the southern area of Eretz Yisrael. V'Shina, what is Shina? Which is Hu Bavel, the Tzvayim Shel Eretz Yisrael. It's Bavel, which was more north of Eretz Yisrael. Even though these areas, we also say it's derisive, we still don't call it Surya. We call Malkim and Shvis Nehekesbem. The distinction is that on these lands, of which we didn't capture, Eretz Amun and Moyev, because we were told not to invade, and also Eretz Mitzrayim, and also Bavel. It has dinim of Trumas and Maasros because they're close enough, but we did not give them a din of Shvius. Virak Surya, Surya was the exception to the rule. Nahagis Shvius, Abu Shamakila become a Dvar Bilka Shvius. We will make it with certain halachas on Shvius, as it was mentioned. So what comes out of this? Nimtzim Lameidim, what we've already explained, is Shebesurya Nahagis Bo Shvius Midrabanan. There's a din of Shvius, we're learning Masechta Shvius. Then Midrabanan, there's rabbinical parts of Shvius on Surya. Tanikan Levaya, Mikamokan Lo Yasul Legarmi Keretz Yisrael. When the Rabbanim were going on Surya, it has dinim of Shvius. It wasn't all the complete halachas of Shvius. We're going to see that there are two distinctions, two leniencies that we give to Surya over the rest of Eretz Yisrael. Now, Hachiv b'Shvius lasu shinui Haim b'malachas haketzira, v'haim b'malachas hadricha v'askita. There's an obligation by Shvius. We know you're not allowed to work on the land. Besides that, you can't go ahead and, this we've had, you can't go ahead and harvest the grains or the produce in the same fashion that you do during the rest of the years. There's certain type of equipment, like we mentioned, that you can't use. Also, when you go ahead and let's say you take grapes and you squeeze out the grapes, or whichever fashion, through dricha schita, it can't be done in the normal fashion. Now, we're going to see later on in Perik Ches that kol malachas shadam oisem b'keri shvius, any of the malachas which are allowed to be done with the produce of shvius, heim b'mechuba, be it while they're attached to the ground, the hainu aksira, the valakitim, and the harvesting or the gathering from the tree, heim b'tolish, or things that you do afterwards, after it's been cut from the ground, the hainu hadricha, the pounding of the grapes to make wine, or aschita. By schita is the lashon of squeezing out of the olives, making olive oil. V'hai yavish, or drying out different types of items like a dry fig. Hakol osa lasus kiderech malachto. Even though Shvius, you're allowed to do this because for food purposes you can use peiros of Shvius, but you don't do it in the normal fashion, like we've mentioned many a time. El chayiv lasoison b'shinu. You have to do it with a bit of a change. It's learned out from a pasuk in Teres Kahanim. It says in Sefer Vayikra, Shekosev ves invein nizirecha leisifso, that you shouldn't go and take your grapes and gather them with the shina leisifsa kiderech haboitzrim. When you gather the grapes, don't do it in the normal fashion of gathering grapes. We can't omru te'enim shel shvius and koitzimbo. You don't cut them, and you do it in a different fashion. So basically, you have to do it with a shinu. Each one was mavuyir in the Mishnah so far. Some we're going to see later on. This is not v'nizbai yisham. And over there, when we talk about that, you have to do a shinui. We also have the yesh chilik the mechuba the hainaksira al kitim and elam achiv lasas b'shini hu min ha'torah. When it comes to plucking, harvesting, whatever you want to call it, The shinui that you have to do is a halacha from the Torah. The Bahachi Mari Pashdikra. Loi sifsa, don't gather it. The shinish layasa kiderach habaytzrim. When it says loi sifsa, what do you mean don't gather the grapes? What's that supposed to mean? How are you supposed to eat it if you don't gather it? It means don't gather it in the normal fashion. Eliyasa b'shini, do it in an abnormal way, not in the regular way that you would go ahead and gather. Avul b'tolish, halacha of tolish, that after you have the grapes and you want to now make grape juice, the hainu adricha v'aschita v'yovish, be it pounding the grapes or squeezing the olives or drying out the figs, this that we have in halacha, that you do it also with a change of pace, that is not in deraisa, like gathering, like plucking, but it's only a derabanan, vasmuchu al haikron. They leave it on this pasuk. Yeah.
So in other words, the first one is the one that's
deraisa.
The deraisa, and the second one.
Yeah. It's a din derabanan. That's another thing we have to know. So basically, we made a distinction between while it's attached to the ground and after it's detached from the ground. Another caveat that you have to know is Shashitas Harasham hu the Kolchiv Kolachiv Lasses Beshinoi. Any place where it says it's obligated upon you to do it with a change, Zerak Beperis Hanishmarim V'Issa. We spoke about this caveat previously. It's a whole shaila. But there are those that say that this halach in the Torah, that you have to do it with a shina, is only if you were doing things improperly. But let's say someone is doing shviyas, he ignores his field, you don't have to have a shina. It's only when you did things in the wrong fashion. Meaning, the owner of the field desecrated the hilchos of shviyas, and he wasn't after this man bia. We're going to not talk about shitas harambam now, but after this man bia, we know bia according to most Rishonim is you mafker it, you abandon it. He didn't do it in the proper fashion. Avul perishal hefka, but if it's perish of hefka, and you went ahead and you decided you're taking this area here, you're allowed to go ahead and not have to do it with a shinu. And how do you know that? Because it says in the pasuk, "Ves in de nizirecha." What does it mean, nizirecha? It says your properties, your anovim that you set aside. What does that mean? V'darshu min hashama ba'aretz ein ataboitz. Only if you watched over it, you put a fence around the vineyard, and then you decide that you're going to go ahead and not do it for merchandise purposes or whatever, then you have to do it with a shina. But if you were mafker it, and you did everything kedasu kedin, even after the zman biyah, no problem. We're going to learn over here in this Mishnah like the Shitas Harash. If you go with the Shitas Harash, it's going to be it's Shalaikidin, but that's only the Shitas Harash. And he brings down here on the note, that there's no distinction. Even if you were a big tzaddik and you did it al pi halacha, kedasi gedin, and you made it l'shem yichud and everything, gam ken yeshno le'isses zeh lasis kedarka. The Rambam disagrees with the Rash. But he's saying, we're going to be fresh like the Rash. We're going back now to home on the range. We're going back to Surya. He's going to be Mavara. That what's the cool of Surya? You have to hold Shvius by Surya. At the end of the day, you do have to hold Shvius. The Besurya Hakila Rabbanim Be'inin Achiv Lasas B'Shina. One of the leniencies we have is that you don't have this problem, this prohibition of doing it with a shinui to gather the grapes. Bein b'malachos talish, ubein b'malachos b'chuba. Umashashanina l'kamon b'perikhes mishnavav mar b'eretz Yisrael. Later on, in Perikhes, when we talk about this halachas, more in detail about shinui, that's talking about Eretz Yisrael. But when we say over here that you're allowed to do things by Surya, and you don't have to do. One of the things you have to realize is that one of the coolest of Surya is that you don't have to do with the Shinui. Okay, that ends the introduction that we have. So again, Surya is outskirts that were captured by the Bekitz and Nimritz, were captured by David HaMelech, and we don't give it halachis of Eretz Yisrael, and all the time, and we don't give it always halachis of Chutz La'aretz all the time. And it's a hybrid. And we're going to be going into how does it work exactly. So let's just start the Mishnah. Oisim betolish b'surya avoloi b'mechuba. You're allowed to do items with Paris of, on Shvius we're talking over here, in Paris at Tlushim in Surya, but not b'mechuba. What does that mean? Min Torah, you're not allowed to work on Eretz Yisrael when it's mechuba, like we mentioned, harvesting. The Chachamim were moisef on it even afterwards. After it's nitlash, it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah. If you look anywhere, Bahar, wherever it is, it doesn't say you can't work. To go package it in the proper fashion, or to dry them out in the proper fashion, no problem. So our Mishnah over here is teaching us that the halachis that you have by Shvius, by Tolish, even though we say b'mechuba, you have in Surya the prohibitions, but when it comes to prohibitions after it's detached from the ground, we don't have a problem, and you can do whatever you want. And you don't have to do it with a shinui, like we said. So if you want to package it, you want to press the grapes, you want to squeeze the olives, you want to dry the figs, you can do it like any of the other 6 years before Shvius. There's no problem. Why? Because this is a Kibbush Yochid, and our Mishnah holds Kibbush Yochid and an extra Kibbush, a private capturing which was done by David HaMelech, and why we call it a private capturing we already mentioned. And therefore, by Surya, in order to show it's not Eretz Yisrael, a lot of times Chazal were misakin things the Rabbanon, and because of it, we didn't want things to happen that were more makel on certain things. This is one of the times, because of Surya, example, Safek Tumah. Sometimes we were machmir that we considered it like Vadei Tomei. And if we were machmir, we said it's considered Tomei, you can't eat it. Even if it's Safek Tumah B'Shus Rab. So when Chazal say Safek Tumah is also, you're not allowed to do it, you're not allowed to burn it either, because let's say by truma, if you have a vada truma, it can be burnt. You burn it. If it's something that is exerted to Rabbanan only, many a times Rabbanan said toilet. You can't burn it, but you can't eat it as well. You let it rot, and that's it. Why? Because we want to show that it's only exerted to Rabbanan. Because there's an issa. If let's say Chas v'Shalom and Atayra, it was Takatahar, be a problem. So therefore we say Torah. In this same fashion, we're showing over here, we're going to see Surya has a separate entity to itself. It's like a hybrid. It's Nishtahin, Nishtaher, call it, whatever you want to. And therefore, we're more makel on certain halachos to show that it's only the Rabbanan and not a Deraisa. We'll continue to mention next week.